Fantastic. With that, we're going to stay on the theme of creating and empowering important, beautiful products. So our next speaker, Jonathan Rivers, is the first Chief Technology Officer at Fortune. And prior to that, he was a CTO at a company that many of you know at Three Pillar Global, product development services company, where he led their global product and engineering groups. He is a strong evangelist of customer-centric with over 15 years of experience of building digital content, advertising, and technology. So he has a very remarkable background. And I think he'll share like how he put this background to good use at his new job. So his talk will share the impressive journey of rebooting Fortune from a site to a digital ecosystem within a mere 9 months. Please welcome Jonathan Rivers.
Howdy. Thank you very much. Great to be here. In fact, I do say howdy. I'm Texan. That's one of those things that we actually do. So I am Jonathan Rivers, CTO of Fortune, and we're going to talk about building. We're almost extreme replatforming, where you've got to build very, very quickly with something that you know, and the approach that I took for that. So waiting for the slides to come up, but really sort of at the heart of everything. There we go. Fortune, for 89 of its 90 years, has been a magazine in a publishing company. And you'll bear with me while I try to make these slides turn, even though they are not for whatever reason. For 89 of 90 years, Fortune has been a very small magazine in very large publishing companies. And through all of that, you found that it never had its own infrastructure or its own life. In Q4 of 2018, Fortune was sold to a private investor. So it had been part of Time, it had been part of AOL Time Warner, it had been part of Meredith, and now it went from being seen into a portfolio to wanting to become a media company. And I've been working with the team since midsummer of 2018, talking to them about what that would look like, how we could do that. And I was lucky enough in the team in 2018. And that's when I found out that the Fortune website was only 5 years old. And that was a bit of a shock to me, to let this 89-year-old company had really only had its website for 5 years. 5 years ago at the time, I had been at the Telegraph replatforming their 10-year-old website. And so to have something so new was a bit of a shock. And the other thing that I found out was that the new owner got all of our journalists, all of the intellectual property, content, but no infrastructure or tech team. So there was no developers, there were no product, there was no anything. I was going to have to build things from the ground up, from scratch. And they asked, as part of this, can we move to a premium model and compete in today's marketplace within a year? And that really means going paid and having a subscription. And because I am slightly insane in the head, I said yes. And so I was given an impossible task. John Wick had an impossible task to get out of the mob. I had one to get into Fortune. And so the ask goes like this. Okay, we need you to redesign the website. It might have only been 5 years old, but it looked like it was designed in 2005. It had a hamburger menu that, I swear, had its own scroll bar, right? The information architecture design, all of that was dated. It was also not secure. 2019, and it was HTTPS. And the page load speeds were around 40 seconds at the time. It was not great at all. We had to replatform to new infrastructure. So the site had been piggybacking on Time's web infrastructure, and we had to move it to our own host, as well as build the entire advertising stack from scratch. Luckily, Some of that work had been started by the time I was hired and it's already in flight and moving along. That wasn't something I had to kick off. I needed to build out a paywall. So we want to go premium. We believe our content is valuable. We believe that our customer will pay for it. We need the mechanisms to be able to engage in e-commerce. And then video. Video, and those of you following the industry know that video is becoming more and more common, and more stories are being told by video. And Fortune, we have been heavily in our video and that as a storytelling medium. And we wanted to know, how can we do more with that? If you look at advertising CPM rates, advertising for video ads is well sought after, and the rates are very, very high. How can we do more with that? And then finally, can we launch mobile, right? The fact it is 2019, we don't have our own mobile applications, we're not in people's pockets, them wherever they go, was something that we wanted to address. So they asked, can you do all of this by the end of the year? And I said yes, and we were lucky enough to be able to do that. And so what I say to anybody when you start a big project like this, right? So you need to do all of that in 9 months, is have philosophy about how you want to build all of these systems, right? If you think about a single website, and now you want to add video, and now you want to add mobile, those are a lot of components that you need to bring together in something seamless for your customer base. And I view media and media really in a three-tier system. The first is your data layer, the second is an API, and the third is a presentation layer. And I'm a cloud guy. I cloud native work for probably about a decade now. And really the idea of loosely coupled service, APIs, microservices are at the heart of everything that you want. And so what I knew I wanted was first the data layer or the CMS layer. You want CMS to be as easy to use as humanly possible. You want it to be easy to get content into the system. The second thing is the content to be as clean as humanly possible. You want it to have as little formatting, as little additional junk. You want it as close to raw form of the content possible. The second is building out an API. And really, having a set of APIs does a couple of things, right? One, it allows you to separate the difference between your CMS and your presentation layer, but it also paves the way for distribution systems, right? RSS feeds are fairly basic. There's not a lot of control that you can do with them. Having a good API allows you to distribute the content to your properties, as well as to other partners, and control who has access to what more easily. And then finally, really viewing it as presentation layers. The difference between your laptop, your cell phone, an Xbox, a Roku, an Apple TV, or a desktop computer are really, really minimal. They are all doing this. They are processing HTML, they are processing JSON, and they are displaying it on a screen. And really understanding that it's not the phone that's important, the laptop that's important, but merely that those are mediums to display the content. And so that way you, again, content as clean as possible. And then you really focus on formatting at the edge, or as close to the presentation layer as possible. And so when I looked at, we're going to have to build these things out, this is what I was keeping in mind as we started to make choices and we started to get building. So the first thing that we built was a video portal. And you know, we knew that video was important and we had investing in video very, very heavily, but it occurred to me very quickly when I joined Fortune that previously we had been treating video as sidecar content. All of our video, right, these rich journalistic stories that we're telling through moving pictures instead of the written word, did only to service articles. They were created and then they were placed to go together as a companion. There was no place that this video could live on. And this stuff is highly engaging, right? We launched this video portal, and when I go look at Google stats these days, right? Our video site has an engagement with a bounce rate of 85% as opposed to 75% for the written content, with 3 to 5 minutes and generally 2 to 4 sessions per visit. So this is very, very sticky. Spend a lot of time with your site. And we knew that this was super important. And the other thing that I knew that I wanted to do with it is make it really, really low infrastructure. I inherited a team. I had a lot to build. What I didn't want to do was spend a lot of time building infrastructure and the tooling around all of that. And so that's why I went with an AWS serverless-based setup. This is a pretty generic setup. I don't think there's any real secret sauce in what we did around the really focusing on API gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB for the data. But the key here was really about time to market. And again, this low infrastructure. The first video portal that I built, and it was 2012, 2013, I had a team of engineers maintaining about 300 servers. A lot of care and feeding on a day-to-day basis for a set of infrastructure. I didn't have the time or the money to build that at Fortune, and going with this very, very low DevOps, SysOps, how you want to call that setup, was key for us getting that built and getting it to market. The second was the mobile app. And, mobile apps for content website are not particularly complicated. I don't think there was any sophisticated, intent behind this, except to aggregate our premium content. So how can I bring together articles, our video, and our newsletters all in one place so that customers could have everything that they need quickly at disposal when they were going throughout their day. The second is that I wanted it to be API driven. Again, we start thinking about this 3-tier model that I was talking about. I wanted to make sure that we had the systems to make it very portable and easy to update on the front end without having to update all of the back end systems at the same time. And then a sort of a side note for our mobile app, and this is a little forward thinking, we really wanted this to be the center of our universe. Fortune has a thriving business where we were using disposable conference apps, right? You would come to a conference such as TechSylvania, download an app for 2 days, look at your schedule, and then after the conference, you throw it away. How do I create an app that starts as a content app, but then incorporates our conference business and any other product line that we put together? And so with that, really, again, a simple model for putting together the mobile apps, iOS and Android. The complication, and I think the thing that really jumped out very, very on, is that we wanted a separate API to service the mobile application. So we run an headless API setup or a headless setup on our WordPress site for our content. The API servicing that was really noisy and junky. It was providing a lot of HTML, a lot of extra stuff that we didn't need to display in mobile, meant processing on app, on device, which slowed everything down. And so we created a second API, which is our content API, that takes data from the first API, strips everything out in a very, very clean fashion. So that way it can either go to syndication partners or our mobile apps. And then next, we had to redesign the website. Again, the site was slow. It was particularly dated. And what it didn't do was have a good job of identifying all the things that Fortune did. Fortune has a conferences business. We have newsletters. We have podcasts. Now we're going to how do we aggregate that all together and really do a pass on information architecture to help people find what they're looking for. Pure, and it needed to be fast. We were doing all of that in the biz as well. The paywall, we went with Piano. It was a third-party service, right? We didn't build it from scratch. You sort of get everything you need out of the box. I might quibble with some of their designs. If you think about the setup as an operating system for the paywall or for the business of content, it was really a great choice and minimized us having to build one more thing. And then finally, we did the design to be modern. It needed to look like 2019. It needed to be cleaner and really focus heavily on customer engagement. And this is where I blew my presentation budget on this slide, right? I wanted some super high quality graphics, and this is where I spent all of my money. But so with the website, we had originally decided to go with WordPress VIP. And again, I'm a DevOps sysadmin by trade, and the idea of not just installing WordPress on my own server is weird and foreign to me when I got to Fortune. But then I started to think about it. And again, I thought back to PBS, where we had 300 servers and 40 databases, a team of 5, just keeping all of that running, right? I didn't really want to get into that business. And I've become a huge fan of WordPress VIP. As a result, was going with that. You get all of the hosting, you get static code checks, security checks, you get CDN, and you get application performance monitoring, New Relic for free. And all of those create significant value. And so having a setup that was Docker based, where essentially there are 2 containers, one contains WordPress in the database, second contains the headless application, made it really easy to iterate quickly, fast, but not having to maintain a lot of DevOps or a lot of system administration, because our developers are just sort of, pushing straight to development and prod without a lot of tooling sort of being necessary. There are a couple of downsides to this. One, you don't get logs, and 2, you don't have direct access to MySQL database. But in terms of speed, it was something that I was willing to sacrifice in order to get much, much more quickly. And then from there, I think, so we have all of these disparate components, and we've got, 9 months, and we have multiple teams building all of these different components at the same time. I needed something to join them together. And this is where we went with firewall setup to front everything. So it uses AWS's web application firewall, Nginx, and Elastic Cache. And this allows you to aggregate everything under fortune.com. So video.fortune.com now becomes fortune.com. Fortuneconferences.com becomes fortune.com conferences. So this allows you to get everything, maintain it under the same URL structure. If you design them to look similar, everybody thinks they're part of an ecosystem. They're not. Different domains to different apps, wondering, are they still part of a Fortune property? This log files, because we put this in front of everything, I got all the requests before they went to any of my providers. This allows me to know what content my customers are consuming, that back to decisions that we want to make, build out analytics reporting. It allows us to diagnose issues if we need to. But most importantly, it also saved us from thundering herd problems, and it saved our bacon 2 or 3 times in 9 months by doing that. And so have in a thundering herd scenarios, you have a load spike that comes in and all your servers down. And then it becomes very, very difficult to bring servers online because the load has not gone away. By having an auto-scaling Nginx plugged into a hot cache, the moment that you have a spike event, the pages are already cached, and it becomes very, very easy for new Nginx servers to come up from cache. You're not having to go to source, and you don't end up knocking production down. And it's a great way to just sort of front everything, and again, pull it all together under something that looks like it is a holistic setup. Admittedly, this looks like that, and for all the engineers in the audience, you will gross oversimplification of all of my infrastructure. But what you have is, 2 WordPress setups both in automatics, WordPress VIP. You have fortune.com and you have Fortune Conferences. You have a full video portal setup that's running in APS or AWS VP, and content API, again, running in an AWS VPC, and using that proxy to front all of it to make sure that your multi-cloud set actually looks like it is all one thing. And I can plug in any service into this infrastructure and still have it all be seamless. And so with that in mind, look, you don't build this stuff without taking a couple of bumps and bruises. And I got 3 lessons, and I'm going to go from least to most important for this lesson number 3. And I love this gift because I love Office Space. Even funnier is this actually happened. When we got to launch on January 15th, we had rung the bell at the New York Stock Exchange earlier, and my developers were working furiously to be able to get to launch. And what was keeping us from was not a technology problem. It was not crashing. It was not server problem. It was that one button was 2 pixels too high. Literally developers taping rulers to their monitors to try and figure out why that wasn't out of alignment. And what happened was we had design drift. And so here's the lesson. When you're building this fast, make sure that you have good communication between your developers and yours. We had designs changing multiple times per day, and what happened wasn't getting updated with the latest designs. And so when the developers started to work, they weren't necessarily on the most up design, and when it came time to launch, there were too many small things that had to get fixed that almost derailed it. Luckily, we were able to make it. Number, don't look too far into the future. And if I made a big mistake during this process, I think it might have been the video portal and building it from scratch. I was looking very, very far into the future, knowing that video was important for fortune.com, for our conferences, for our new product, Fortune Connect, which we're about to launch in 2 weeks from now. And I knew with a large scale video setup, having destinations and windows are really, really important. And so I tried to build for the future. And if I could go back, I probably would have built my video portal just using Bright Cove and doing a much simpler setup. Because if you're moving fast, obedience and applying the least amount of energy you need is the way. I had somebody say that it's only technical debt when it becomes a requirement. And so if we didn't have those things in the future, it wouldn't have been technical debt. They would have been new requirements, and we could have gone a lot faster. And then finally, the number 1 lesson I learned, and I will get some heat for this. I've said it before, but do not bring a design thinker to a deadline. I promise you it will go sideways. Design thinking alleged great. I know a lot of people who are sort of proponents of it, but you've got 9 months to build a lot of stuff to get market. You don't need a design thinker to do that, right? You don't want to empathize, test, iterate. Lots of Post-it notes do not create working software. Post-it, they decorate walls, they clutter things up. The only thing that has value is working software in production, right? Software in a code repository has no value. A note has no value. Only software in the hands of people really, really matters. That's the thing. There isn't a lot of time for iteration when you have an existing that you need to replatform. There is not endless time or debate about how a color makes somebody feel. What you have to do is work with all of your stakeholders to deliver value as quickly as possible. And that value has been created, and once you as a team have proven yourself, that's what really sort of comes to mind. And I know I'm coming up on time, and so I will go to the last slide. I was working with a guy a couple of years ago, and in his first, he didn't actually know he was being interviewed. That was the fun part. He and I were talking, and he said something to me prophetic that I've held true all of these years, which is anything worth building a team to build. And so I put this slide 1 because I want to recognize all of the teams. My new that I love, my good friends in Romania who have. But if you want to talk about what does it take to do all of this in 9 months, starting from zero. It is finding all of those people, letting them figure out, making sure they understand why you're doing it, and keeping focused and making it happen. And with that, I will be around to answer questions later. I know I'm come my time. So thank you all very much for having me. Hopefully this has been elucidating and not just me ranting about stuff I've already done.
I love the credits that you give your developers at the end. Feels like a Hollywood blockbuster produced in 9 months.
You know, I could not have done it without all of them. I think what you realize when you become a CTO is that you're not working for a living anymore, right? I'm working through other people. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and I am deeply honored that all of them will help me create things like this, and the credit goes to them, never to me.
Fantastic. So for all of our audience, Jonathan is going to be also on the QA stage, so you can ask him more questions. He has given like great controversial openings that you can ask him about design thinking and all the things that he's shared. So I'm sure there's going to be a fun conversation with some people that can share different opinions. So once again, thank you very much for being with us virtually, Jonathan, and looking forward to the conversation on the QA stage.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.